What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch. Today, we're going to continue down our Git Good guide series, which focuses on gameplay that you guys submit in for review. If you want to get featured on the channel, upload full games to YouTube where you lost but weren't sure why, or were struggling with something specific, and email in the YouTube link to youroverwatchplays@gmail.com. To incentivize getting a lot of submissions, I do watch, review, and respond to every email we get, to at very least give you a short pointer or two to help improve your gameplay, and also the density of good examples for use in our videos. Does it take a long time to answer all those emails? Yes, it does. So please be patient. I do eventually get to all of them. Send in as many games as you like. Today we're going to be looking at some key mistakes made often by the three common main tanks, Rein, Orisa, and Winston. And this video will be split into three separate parts: the basic mechanics and brawling of how those characters operate, survival tactics, and then engage tactics, especially when we're talking about working around chokes. Kicking it off with Reinhardt, this was evident in the intro clips we had already been showing, but is made possibly even more clear when we're controlling a choke like the one this Rein Zarya Deathball comp is attempting to get through to get onto point. I like contesting them here. This is a good idea, because once the enemy is bottlenecked into a choke, as we all know, it's much easier for your entire team to funnel damage towards a singular direction. However, in the midst of this, there's a lot going wrong here, and if you're at around diamond rank or below, it's usually the case that your Rein Zarya brawling isn't quite there. We're going to look at this moment by moment, and you'll see we're mistiming when we actually want to W or S, or thumbstick forward, thumbstick back if you're on the consoles. I actually like contesting the Rein even earlier here. This is a cool idea. Because we have armor health, healers behind us, and a Zarya bubble at the ready, contesting early for swings is fine. But as we go forward, our Zarya thinks we're going to contest, and we don't, so we have to go forward again to get value out of the Zarya bubble, whereas we got to make up our mind. If you expect him to use that resource to put into you, get value out of that bubble and swing, or don't go there at all because you're baiting your Zarya to bubble you. I'm sure in many worlds, the bubble timing gets messed up anyway, and you get chain CC'd around the corner, but if you felt like that was the case, then don't contest this anyway. Do one or the other. Either go for the more secured fight around the corner, or commit to letting the bubble give you extra health and allow you to do a little bit of brawling. Now, on the next bubble rotation, a similar thing happens where we're not actually using the value of what bubble provides. Every time you feel and hear the bubble surround you, you need to be pressing W to swing, because this is how this is going down. You have full health, 200 armor, you're very durable as Reinhardt. The Brigitte bashes you, it feels bad. You're starting to feel low, but your healers are healing you, Zarya bubbles to save you, and you're already at full life again. Right now, you need to be swinging and fire striking and punching the enemy right in the face, not shielding, because during the time you have bubble, you're either invulnerable or charging your Zarya. And because we don't play aggressive enough, our Zarya is getting less charge than their Zarya. Also, it doesn't help that our Pharah, for some reason, swoops down onto the ground and kills herself. Okay, that's not very good. That's going to make this attrition war rough anyway, but also backing up into a retreat now, this player especially needed to learn how to either fully retreat or fully commit. So we didn't fully commit onto the choke to try to swing down the brig or focus something, and we didn't really charge our Zarya very well either. Then they start to win, but we guarantee that they will win this fight by trying to hold our ground in the middle of the point with no shield and low resources. This is a full retreat, abandoned ship, try to get back and regen your cooldowns type moment. Look how wide this angle is and how easy it is for the entire team to now turn this corner and all shoot us at once. If we abandon point right now to go back and regen our shield, have everybody hide a bit, maybe even having a chance for our respawn character to come back in time for the next engagement, we could actually have a chance to swing this fight back. But we fully commit, we don't have enough healing resources to even keep us alive. We should know that because we're running Mercy Zen. So with that, you have to be using your shield and your Zarya bubbles as an extension of your life. Like, that's basically what your tanking is when you have low healing. Now, the same exact problem comes up in this next clip as well, where this time, the enemy Rein is actually retreating appropriately. He's realizing he has less resources, so he's retreating some space. But instead of regenning our shield, we stick in longer, and now, after we take some damage, we realize, oh, we don't have a shield anymore. Now we're using our Zarya bubble just to hopefully save you, and again, we find ourselves stuck at a really long angle with no shield to use. And I think the thing is, after speaking with some Ryan players that play this way, players assume that you have to stand in front for your team or they'll just die. And that's somewhat true at lower ranks, but that doesn't mean it's right. This is made a lot easier if you get onto voice comms and say, I'm regenning shield, don't peek. In these moments, when you find yourself obviously going to be taking too much damage, you need to be the one to run away and have everyone else run away too. If you get some teammates that do listen to that call, you will be able to re-engage with a full shield maybe, all of a sudden upping your sustain to a severe degree. It's almost like sneaking in an entire extra team fight just by managing that resource. Yielding some ground and rubber banding and coming back will massively increase how much tanking pressure we put on the map over the course of the game, whereas fully committing in a spot that you're definitely going to die puts you to spawn, so you can't provide tanking if you're dead anyway. Now we're going to look at some Winston mechanical play, and I think people really undervalue how important executing perfectly with Winston is to playing him well. You look at the top pro players on Winston, a guy like Fissure or OGE or Muma, they're absolutely graceful with everything they do on the character. Our gold friend here has quite a few things to improve on. First of all, bubble placement and bubble usage. So that's timing when you need it and where you need it. We drop our bubble here onto point and then don't use it. What this does is put our tanking pressure into harm's way, allowing them to shoot something meaningful. That's the opposite of what a tank wants to do. You want to put your anti-damage abilities in the way of the most relevant damage, or to block off Ana's line of sight and all sorts of different things. It might have been just fine to bubble right on point and fight in it, because anyone who challenges you is going to struggle to get healing from Ana coming across on the bridge. Or, another option, don't drop bubble at all. You don't have to drop bubble immediately as you go in. Use it to block specific cooldowns or specific lines of sight. Just having it out on the field without any purpose to it might waste it, which I think you did right here. No one even really could use it, and everyone jumped out of it. Then even worse yet, you see a bunch of squishies in front of you and you want to go at them, but now we don't have bubble on cooldown. So whereas we would be a massive pain in the neck for 2, even 3 enemies here, if we had a bubble to block all of their damage and Ana's healing through it, but instead, we're just face tanking and feeding our life. Now this next clip, pretty good pursuit onto the Winston. You know he's low, so we're gonna keep focusing him, and we go to make what you may not have realized was an attempt to clutch out this fight. Watching the kill feed's pretty important here. By the time we were chasing the Winston, we were already a member down. Then we lost our Diva mech and our Genji. This is a 3v6. Then we go for the heroic Winston boop. We kill 2, but they still kill another, and then go back and get our Junkrat again, dying on respawn. So during this, we need to be able to take stock of the battlefield and know how many numbers the enemy has and what we're even fighting for. The primal play worked out, kind of, but it only would yield an advantage if we jump back in time to regroup with our team to maybe find a window where the 2 you killed don't get back to the next fight in time. But in general, I think Winston Primal Rage mechanics is probably one of the #1 things tank players will want to practice, even if it's outside of game. Make a custom game. You can play against bots or just by yourself and really practice spamming the shift button, because the jump pack when it lands does 50 and your melee punches only do 40. So ideally you want to combo both of them and attempt to get about as much value out of Primal as a Genji would. It takes a bit more work, but you have more health, and if you perform mechanically well enough, you can do just as much work as a Genji blade. But also a major mistake that I want to point out here, each time our Winston hero dives in, we're pressing bubble so early that we're not even able to play inside our bubble. It's actually good that we're able to do the momentum hop after we land with the jump, but just wait to pop bubble until you land properly so that you're either directly inside or at the edge of the bubble when you finish your momentum. Especially as you go up the ranks, Winstons are just really easy to hit, and your face will get melted if it's ever outside of a bubble against higher rated players. But in general, a good tip I think for every tank player, and this goes for console as well, is to look to raise your sensitivity. This is so important. You don't need precise aim playing tank characters for the most part. You need really quick reaction times, because the difference of you being in the fight, taking too much damage, and needing to react and run away can be razor thin. Here we had leap, and we saw this Rhine pin coming. If we quick 180 or make some fast motion to dodge this, we probably end up winning this entire fight, and I'm not kidding. These are the type of moments that happen in a game where if you make this play, you might carry this entire game. Also, faster sensitivity in general will help you be a more ferocious Winston Primal Rage player, as well as the faster you move and change directions and zip around, the harder you will be to hit just in general, even if you are the size of King Kong. Moving with Primal really quick will avoid a lot of damage and focus fire onto you. The other thing I would stress with Winston Mechanics that raising your sense can help you do was shown off in this clip. Winston's aim isn't hard in theory. It's a big cone, very forgiving, but it does so low damage that you can't afford to miss ever. You want to be able to track perfectly, so as this Lucio's jumping around, we don't want any moment where he's able to drift outside of our Tesla cannon. So raising our sense so that we can always be looking exactly where we need and there's not any nanosecond where we're off target is really important. Also, a move like this to jump in melee is actually great, but because our sensitivity is so low, our actions per minute on how quickly we reacquire the target and start zapping again isn't as fast as it could be. This is incredibly important because as you go up against healing sources that rival Winston's damage, you want to be able to maximize that impact as much as possible so that the rest of your team can actually make an impact. A lot of Winston's damage often operates to equalize a healing source or to cleave into multiple targets. It's supportive damage in a way where it's good at either isolating something entirely or being the difference maker to outdo their healing so that the rest of your team can actually damage something. But with that principle laid out, this leads us into this next clip on Nepal, where chasing the Mercy is almost never a good idea in my opinion. Mercy's healing is only 50 a second, so if you have to put yourself out of position into a spot where you can't really do much but whiff on the Mercy as she flies away, that's a huge mistake. Instead, just look to pressure down anything and take useful ground for yourself or your team, and if you hit 1 or even 2 targets, you're outdoing the value Mercy can do with healing already. Only commit to the Mercy frag if you feel you mechanically are going to perform what's required to get her. So if she just uses Guardian Angel, maybe then you leap after her and track her midair and do everything that might get a kill on her. But once she has an orb, Winston by himself is not going to kill her. You need something else that can do damage to her, and that's going to be team comp dependent. Far better to just pressure down something you can press your mobility advantage against, rather than minimizing your damage to basically nothing while Mercy dodges everything you do. Now let's move on to Orisa, and for this segment, we're going to focus on halts. I think the biggest thing I see is that players often just toss this halt cooldown into the void, into the mass of the enemy, and pray something works out. If you have a Roadhog and an Orisa, there's almost no excuse to not get a good percentage of halt hook combos together. It's not a hard thing to pull off, you just need a little bit of coordination, and especially since you're playing in a stack, there's no reason that you can't call out where you're looking to pull something. It could be anything, any character at all. Getting hooked in by Roadhog leads them to focus fire. So instead of tossing these out willy-nilly, look for openings and cracks in the defense so that you can time with your Roadhog player to cluster them together when he has hook available. Now, there's a bit of timing that he has to do to make sure that he presses shift into the ball at the right moment, but cross that bridge when you get to it. Other important tips for halt: don't use it when you have to reload, and instead use it to set up damage and start pre-firing at that location. You don't always have to go for map knockoffs, and beyond just Roadhog hook, look to other teammates that have really good cooldowns that could dump into a halt, especially on a character who is near you and thinks that they're able to escape, but let's say holding them just in place for a secured anti-nade might be a really big play. I emphasize more communication with this one, but also game sense as well. You don't just want to connect with halt, you want to punish aggression or pull someone out of safety. If the place you're taking them is where they'd want to be anyway, don't use halt, just hold it longer until you find a bigger value one. You don't need to use it on cooldown unless you're really chaining the halt hook combo over and over again. Now onto our next section, we're going to focus focus a bit more on survival, because that's something that every tank player really needs to think about. In this situation, we have the point, but we do not have a Lucio on King of the Hill. Very important. Instead, we have Brigitte Mercy, which means we're slow, but we have one heck of a brutal front line. But here's the thing, I don't think the enemy's got a Lucio either. So what this means, it will take them forever to get from A to B to even begin to pressure the point. Because of this, there's no reason for us to go attack quite early. We don't have a Zarya like in the previous examples where we're trying to brawl a bit in order to gain charge for her. In certain matchups, especially when you have low healing, you have to be willing to do nothing and just shoot fire strikes every once in a while from far away. Going at the enemy here is just asking for us to die to all manner of things. They have a McCree, Reinhardt with his supports close while yours are away. The Doomfist is here. Rein has ult from the previous fight. You don't want to fight here. If you're playing a super slow comp, just hold on point where you're closer to your team and it's easier to just defend. If you do have a Lucio here, then maybe you can contest this a little bit because Lucio's speed can help you dodge some of their big cooldowns, but they've got Pharah over the top taking space. This is just bad news. Now this next clip, we're actually looking at a, I believe, platinum ranked scrim, and this team is actually running a 3-3 GOATS variant meta comp, playing up against some weird triple DPS Brigitte in the tank slot composition, and our heroes don't really know what to do. They swap off the 3-3, but I don't think they even had to, and in fact, getting off the Lucio is the biggest mistake you can ever make in this type of matchup, and we're going to show you some clear examples why. They're running a quick play-esque fragging comp. Solo tank Winston, Brigitte's in the flex tank slot, they got a bunch of damage sources split across the map. It can be difficult to know what to fight or what to do. So, we actually take a pretty decent fight here in close range. Rein Zarya gets brawling, but hey, our backline's starting to get wrecked. And here we start to notice the inflexibility of Rein. He's all in on these types of positions and needs to get value out of a pin like this to have any hope. Now, our heroes do frag out in this situation, but we're going to see, especially in this upcoming clip, on how this playstyle is simply weak to how the enemy is playing. And the lack of Lucio is just asking for us to lose this fight altogether. Again, we do the right thing. We take the fight into a close range brawl, beat up on the Winston. Now, all we have to do is survive on point because they have very low tanking pressure. Well, in theory anyway. The battle starts to get really split up and we look like we're winning it. But this is the carry potential of mobility heroes like Tracer and Lucio. Despite them having a man disadvantage, because they have a mobility advantage, they're able to outposition our team. Somehow we got Rein split off over here, Zarya's over there, and our backline is off fighting duels. This means that our tanking pressure is providing no value to this fight whatsoever, other than just being on point. Off screen, we see the Tracer goes and wins her duel. We get isolated and can't get healed because our backline is running for their life. So let's just look back at this team fight carefully. We go from a spot where it looks like we're ahead, but boom, in the backline, our flex support goes down. Then our Zenyatta goes down. We have no healing because we can't quickly respond to the pressure that they want to put on our backline when we go to press W onto point. So killing their front line almost doesn't matter because now their Lucio Tracer is allowed to just zip around everybody and nobody can get healed. We're all forced to run for our lives and don't really know what to do. McCree gets a flanking Deadeye, Tracer goes wins the duel, and with how long this fight took, remember, speed is the operative word here, the Winston we killed at the start of the fight comes back! It's like, how does this happen? Well, you're running a slow tanky comp with no Lucio. You're just going to get danced around. It's a must pick in a Rein Zarya setup just about every single time. And this theme continues, we try to go take space, they say, oh, you can't reposition quickly, Reinhardt? I'll just go kill your backline for free, thank you very much. Our Reinhardt friend realizes, well, we got to get to the point now. We better pick Lucio before the game's over, but it's too little too late. We're equalizing our ability to play together now, finally. We're all together and can move somewhere, but they have a massive ult advantage, and we end up losing because of it. I know people get really bored of me saying you have to pick Lucio in certain situations, but you're playing deathball tanks that need to brawl and close the distance, yet you're going against mobility characters that will never let you do that. So the only option is either to have Lucio or to play mobility tanks yourself. Or even one step further, don't play tanks. You would provide more value not having a tank and at least being able to move around or threaten damage angles at range or do something in some of this chaos rather than having your tanking presence whiff because the enemy can just ignore it at every point. Now, back on Orisa again, but somewhat this goes for all the tanks as well, even Winston as you dance around bubbles and whatnot. As a main tank, you should always be aware of where damage sources are coming from. Sure, we're ahead in this fight, but anytime we leave the safety of of our bunker, we need to be afraid that damage can get onto us. Even going off to chase this McCree makes me a little bit nervous. We probably get the same value launching the Halt from miles away as we do if we physically walk over there to do the same thing. And this tendency to feel safe outside of our barrier's line of sight against the damage sources is what's going to get us killed in a couple examples here. We place this vertical barrier, which isn't placed very well, and because of it, when we stand right here like this, we are fully outside of our barrier standing still. The Widowmaker at the choke is like, wow, it's time to rank up today. The enemy tanks have 2 barriers and the Orisa's using neither of them. Then again, we walk right in front of the barrier here just to get domed by the Widowmaker. This is a dream for her. Now, luckily, our Mercy reses us, but as soon as we see our Reinhardt start to move, then we also need to know that we're going to be lacking in the shield break department and need to be aware of how much health our shield has, how quickly it's taking damage, and how long it's going to be until our next shield is off cooldown. As soon as this barrier is about to break and we don't have another one, we need to immediately press Fortify preemptively because damage resistance will get more value the more health you have, because it will stack with the natural armor resistance that your armor health provides. It'll be -5 per damage instance, then the massive reduction from Fortify, allowing you to tank a lot of damage to the face. Whereas, if we wait to use Fortify like this until we start to get shot, well, we're using it to reduce damage on 80 health, which a full Widowmaker shot does 120, meaning that Fortify does nothing. Whereas if we used it right away, the Widow shot that was inevitably coming would have only been chewing into our main armor health. Playing within the armor health is always where we want to stay. So keeping it up and active and rotating it to do our face tanking on every tank is what you want to do. Now this next clip really shows off lack of shield dancing, very similar to how we weren't respecting damage angles from the Widowmaker, but this time we even have a shield available and the enemy Reinhardt pins. So yes, he gets some kills, but we have a main tank and they don't. So if we play a lot better, we should actually be able to withstand this onslaught and easily retake. As you start to feel the enemy press W past your barrier, you need to be jumping back. This halt is good, but you can tell the Tracer's flanking behind you, Reaper's Wing past you. Don't refresh the barrier just when it's going to crack. Refresh it to get it into a better position. If you start jumping back right now and put down a barrier a few feet behind him, you're going to extend your uptime, maybe survive long enough to get another halt, put more damage out, etc., etc. It's these maximizing uptime plays that really make the difference and level up your tank play. Now, the last section, we're going to be looking specifically at working through difficult chokes. Some of the previous information does flow quite nicely into this as well, and we're especially going to see it right here at this entry clip. We're working our way up to top right. The enemy is contesting us, and we feel our shields going down. And you know what that means? It's pin time. No, that's a pretty bad idea, actually. You're probably safe to just W and swing a little bit or hide back, regen your shield. But anyway, we survive with the pin, and we get to another choke. Okay, now, stop. You are low on health and have no shield. Just like in our previous examples on Blizzard World, this is time to just duck around the corner, be happy that the enemy tanks aren't on you, and you actually have a high ground advantage, regen your health and your shield, then go again. Instead, we W right into like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sources of damage and die instantly. Your team's struggling to keep up with you, and you wouldn't be able to survive all this damage with like 5 healers, which is interesting because your Zarya teammate, I know in chat, kept saying that you didn't have enough healing. Well, when tanks face tank too many damage angles, it feels that way. But you only have 6 players on the team, and even if 4 of them were healers for your 2 tanks, you would still struggle to stay alive taking really bad angles like this. Now, moving on to the next engagement, Mei here is exploiting our immobility, tosses down the Blizzard, and this is the kind of thing that happens, unfortunately, in Overwatch, where you take a really bad engagement, the enemy has a ton of ults now, they kind of win this fight for free, but they pop Valkyrie when they didn't need it. However, at this point in the game, your teammate is begging for a higher amount of healing, even though that is the worst idea, actually, and this is going to go much worse, swapping the Lucio for the Mercy here. Now, we reset up to go again, but it'll be even easier for the Mei now to wall us off. Remember, you outplay some of these chokehold shenanigans, you need either speed, mobility, flank, some combination of these ideas. Putting more healing into tanks just so your Zarya can get split off and focus fired in front of you doesn't help. You either have to speed together so that it's really really hard to wall you off properly, or do something to bait the wall, go a different direction. Frankly, you have a Symmetra, which isn't even bad against this big bunker defensive setup. Use the Sim Telly to go to point or to some point of safety so you're not fighting into these claustrophobic choke positions. But in any case, moving slow without Lucio here just means your whole team is easily farmable. I think part of the reason why players struggle with this concept is that it's hard to get the perspective of your teammates in all these different situations. Each time that we're trying to press W as Reinhardt, whether it was the first clip or right here, our teammates are like arms stretch outward. Stop, hold on, I have to catch up. Like, they're slow. Reinhardt pinning is really fast. It's hard for the whole team to even keep up to stay together without a Lucio pick. Better yet, the other options may have been to play dive tanks. It would be hard up against the Torb turret as well. They have just a really strong defense for this level of play, but oddly enough, the Symmetra was one of the best picks at your comp. The team just didn't utilize it here at all. Instead, walking right into where the Mei could fight, rather than using the teleporter to try to get right to point, which would have made the Mei wall useless. Alright, another brutal choke for you. Hanamura, that infamous stairwell where every Overwatch League game takes place. We have another Reinhardt, and you'd be forgiven in thinking that these are the same exact player. They're not. Pinning 6 miles deep into the enemy team sort of does something. The problem is it gets us a kill, but it puts us way out in no man's land and leaves their tank there. So that means the Reinhardt is uncontested to go battle whatever squishy he wants. And yes, you go kill the enemy backline, but that's not your win condition to take B on 2CP. The whole team's got to sustain and set up for horde mode, right? Nazi zombies. If one person goes down, it usually snowballs into everybody going down, right? And you see, as we come in here, even with this Earth Shatter getting value, the enemy Zarya is able to battle it out on the stairwell, forcing fights in a location no one wants to be. This is where a Lucio speed boost would get these teammates up the stairs, out of harm's way, quickly into a spot where you can actually fight meaningfully. Then, during all this other shenanery of Reinhardt pinning across the world, notice how their tanks are easily able to just go find our Ana, and we can't ever sustain. Because what Ana's trying to do is keep up with everything you're doing and getting in spots where she can heal the team. But because we just blew past the enemy front line and the flankers that were up top, we're setting ourselves up to basically trade. We're diving deep to go get a kill, but it's guaranteeing that characters on our team that are really weak to getting fought in 1v1s just go die for free, and you can't afford them to die. You have to engage in ways that sets them up to survive and succeed, which means winning high ground first, sustaining your squishies up there so that they then can put their resources down onto the point, onto you. This is the reason why Overwatch League teams never touch the point, basically, until they win high ground. Now, they do more tricks too, where they maybe will send a tracer to backcap, harass, and they would take dive tanks to a similar spot because they can rotate from either punishing something on the low ground to going back up high ground. But in any case, that's the principle why the hallway fight in Overwatch League games last forever. So, coming up to this next fight, very similar principles, of course. Yes, we get a pin that gets us to points, but we still have no ground to work with. Look where the rest of our team is trying to fight. We're still battling at the high ground. This fight hasn't been won yet. So trading 1 for 1, giving a 10-second window for a man advantage just isn't good enough. We have to be more careful of where these pins are going and make sure that we pin to stay with our team. These pins look like we're trying to get to point every time, which is the opposite of what you want to do. Eventually, a big ult fight happens, which was kind of the case even at the choke of A, where both teams play these choke engagements really poorly until some ults break everything open and win the map one way or the other. But the problem is our fundamentals were never quite secure on how to take this map. We put too many members on point. I really stress that as a squishy character, you almost never want to cap the objective. Let tanks pressure it and avoid damage at all costs, because especially as you go up the ranks, players are really good at coming right out of spawn, targeting a squishy and killing them immediately, which can be enough to snowball these fights back, which essentially happens. Both our DPS get kind of weeded out in this fight eventually, and it lasts long enough for the defensive ults to come online, and then we get wrecked. 2CP in a nutshell, really hard game mode, but hey, knowing these tanking tactics is all the difference, honestly. It's all about clean engagements, fighting at the right spot, and getting your team where they need to be. You start implementing these ideas, and you're going to find 2CP a much easier and enjoyable mode to play. Guys, that's going to be everything for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe, because we do upload each and every day. So you're going to want to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.